Well, hello, everybody. My name is Alan Hood. I'm the professor of trumpet at the University of Denver's Lamont School of Music, and welcome to my presentation on the quintessential hard-bop trumpeter Clifford Brown, entitled WWCD, What Would Clifford Do? It should probably be entitled What Did Clifford Do, but that's a whole nother matter there. I've been enamored with Clifford's playing ever since I was a young high school student and have listened to him and researched him ever since. Um, in my master's degree in 1992, I did a research project on Clifford, and my passion for researching him has continued all the way to this present day. As a matter of fact, I teach a course here at the Lamont School of Music on Clifford every spring, and so I decided to do this project on Brownie. Um, this presentation will not be a historical, chronological um, kind of class like that is, but it's actually meant to illuminate Clifford Brown as a trumpet artist, as a practicer, as a jazz player, even as a businessman, and of course as a person. So I wanted to explore what did he do that made him so great, and what are some of the things we can do in our playing and practicing and musical lives that would make us better folks. Um, so I wanted to utilize as much as possible direct quotes from Brownie himself and also supplement it with commentary from family members, most notably his wife LaRue, some of his friends, of course, his musical cohorts, and even a few renowned jazz and trumpet pedagogues. So first, let me introduce Clifford, a brief history of Clifford to the uninitiated, so we can all start on the same page. First of all, though, I'm going to turn my video off, and I'll rejoin you all at the end of the program so as not to disrupt your reading and listening and viewing pleasure and enjoyment. So I will talk to you all at the end, or I see you all again at the end. I'll talk to you through the whole thing, actually. Okay, see ya. Okay, that is not Clifford Brown, of course, but we'll get to that in a second. Um, Clifford was born in 1930 and grew up on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is only about 23 miles from the famed jazz scene of Philadelphia. So he grew up in a real fertile environment. Like most normal people, he graduated from high school and went to college for mathematics, actually, and music. And in 1950, though, that was cut short by a horrific car accident that actually incapacitated him for nearly a year. During that year, he practiced ferociously, and I think that's when most people said he decided to become a musician head first. He jumped into music. After he recovered from that accident, he joined Chris Powell in the Blue Flames, which was a local rhythm and blues group around Philadelphia, and they toured all over. And really, from there, it was a meteoric rise to the top. Everyone started hearing him and paying attention to him. And he started recording and playing with such luminaries as Tad Dameron, J.J. Johnson, Lou Donaldson, and even secured his own Blue Note recording date by the end of the summer of 1953. Immediately following that recording, he went on a European tour with the Lionel Hampton Band, and he made many, many more wonderful recordings over in Europe. And when he got back from that, he really freelanced around the New York, Philadelphia area with people like Art Blakey and most notably the great Charlie Parker Bird himself, up to the point that in March 1954, the fateful telephone call came from bebop drummer Max Roach, who asked him to come out and co-lead a quintet out on the West Coast, out in LA. So Clifford flew out there. They started their quintet. He met and married a wonderful and beautiful woman named LaRue, and they started the group. And eventually, he and LaRue moved back east, um, and he started touring and recording with the Clifford Brown Max Roach Quintet, and basically spent about 2 years total with that group. Uh, at the end of 1955, he and LaRue had a little son, Clifford Brown Jr., and he really just got to spend 6 months with him until the final fatal car accident that took his life on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And he was only 25 years old, not yet 26. Very sad time. He did leave us a legacy of recordings, though, and great compositions which have become standards. And as far as I'm concerned, and so many people, he is the gold standard that we look to if you want to be a jazz trumpet player. So that's why we study him today. So here's a little clip of him playing on the Soupy Sales variety show in Detroit, Michigan in February of 1956. Hope you enjoy it.
Ensemble, and with us tonight is one of the outstanding jazz trumpeters in the country today, MRC recording star Clifford Brown.
Yeah, how's that for a rare clip? You can see more of that on YouTube. You look up the Soupy Sales show with Clifford. Okay, so let's get started with our 4 parts. This first part is all about his practicing, his practice habits, and his trumpet playing. And I just want to say up front that you all, as the viewers, have a very, very important role, and that's to read all the quotes as soon as I change the slide. I'll be playing a lot of music, and there's a lot of quotes on there, and there's a lot of cool and rare pictures and everything, and I won't have time to actually cover everything. So to get the best knowledge and enjoyment out of this, just please read the quotes when you need to. Okay, so let's get going. Let's start out with some quotes from Clifford himself. Here we go.
Well, I used to practice, say about 2 hours just about every day. The most important thing in my practicing, I think, was that I didn't miss any days. I would practice every day, even if I had to cut the time short. It's very important for trumpet players to warm up thoroughly before they start to play the night. And I find that although you can be working every night consistently, that for a trumpet player alone, that's really not just enough to suffice. And of course, when you're not working, it's very essential that you practice, in order to keep up with the things that you develop when you are working and practicing.
That's Clifford Brown talking to Willis Conover, who was an announcer, radio host for the Voice of America show, which aired overseas. This was done in December of 1955, and most of that interview is also on YouTube if you want to check it all out. I just have a little comment here. I'm pretty sure in his early days, Clifford practiced way more than 2 hours a day, but that's probably what he settled to eventually by this point. There's a couple more quotes from Clifford about Dizzy and Miles and playing the range of the instrument.
He does very well too. But I guess the main thing is it's a matter of phrasing and taste. Dizzy's quite a technician, and I don't think I play quite as technically inspired as he does.
Well, how would you compare Miles Davis with you?
Well, Miles plays a style that's very relaxed. It's almost it's on the in the direction of being easy to imitate, I would say, because he doesn't play a whole lot of notes, but what he does play is in very good taste, and it swings. To cover the full range of the instrument is extremely difficult, and you have to practice sometimes a lot of lip slurs and staccatos and things of that sort from the bottom of the instrument, so to speak, all the way up to the top. And the trumpet now of today has such a wide range that in order to play from the the bottom all the way up to the top is quite a feat, and it's something that we're all, Dizzy and myself, and we're all working on in the hopes of mastering it completely.
Let's listen to Dizzy and Clifford on Dizzy's composition, "The Night in Tunisia." First, Dizzy Gillespie's 1946 recording. And now Clifford Brown's recording, so at a jam session in 1955. Here's some commentary Clifford Brown made about a recording that Harry James did. This was played for him during a blindfold test in the Downbeat magazine, so he had no idea who he was hearing, and he had to give his critique and star rating for the pieces he heard. So this is what he says about this one. And he didn't actually recognize Harry James when this was played for him, and that really tickled his wife, LaRue, because Clifford loved Harry James. And speaking of LaRue, here she is right here. And this is a little quote you can read about Clifford's almost obsession with practicing. You can see he practiced after breakfast, after lunch, after going out, after doing chores, whatever he had to do. He knew he had to sit down and do some practicing. And even when he couldn't blow an open horn or even with a mute, he would do lip exercises and tonguing exercises. And one she said he did all the time, morning, noon, and night, was he pursed his lips together, kind of in an isometric tension, and kind of tongued through his lips, probably to improve his incredible single tonguing, but also to kind of exercise his chops and keep those in place. Also, his teacher, Robert Boise Lowry in Wilmington, she mentions that Boise taught him to have a stick-to-itiveness that he had to practice. So two very important people in Clifford's life, his wife LaRue and his teacher Boise. And here's Boise on the next slide. And you could read these little quotes here as you listen to Clifford play a little bit of ornithology with his teacher Boise, who was a sax and trumpet player. And this is a lesson that he was taking in Boise's basement, and they were playing and improvising on ornithology. So this is really Clifford's first recorded solo in his teenage years. I love the quote from Ralph Morris here, who I can still see his face when he said this. He was a neighbor of Brown's. He lived about 5 doors down, and he was a trumpet player himself. And he said, "Oh, he used to get on my nerves. He practiced so much." I can still see his face saying that. And here's some more quotes about him practicing diligently. His brother Leon found him in a closet one Sunday morning, so he wouldn't disturb anybody. And when he was incapacitated from that accident, just playing all the time. All the neighborhood people could hear Clifford. And very importantly, something he learned from Boise, who had a disc cutter and recorded himself all the time, and some of the lessons he gave. He taught Clifford to record his practice. So LaRue mentioned he recorded his practice every day, practically. And the bass player with the group, George Morrow, confirmed that he would do that and listen to chess problems while he was listening back to it. I mean, solve chess problems when he was listening back. This last little quote here is a Portland, Oregon DJ, Don Manning, made a call to Clifford Brown out of the blue backstage at the Basin Street Club and taped a couple conversations with him. So he told Clifford he taped the show on the radio, and Clifford was excited that he wanted to hear the tape. So he loved to um, listen back to himself to learn as much as he could for the next performance.
I just had a calling about it. You see, I taped it, last week and this week both. Oh, I see. Would like to hear the tape now.
And speaking about practice tapes, there are some available online that you can listen to. And I have a little clip here for you to check out while Bobby Shew talks about it. And of course, Bobby Shew is one of mine and all of ours, I believe, favorite trumpet player. And he's also a great thinker and almost a scientist about studying the trumpet. So his insights are really incredible. So you can read what he has to say about Clifford practicing while you listen to a little bit of it. And here's a little clip of him playing Donna Lee at that same jam session in 1955. You can read these quotes about him trying to improve his breathing and trying to play long, long lines, which he was very good at. Couple of comments about these photos here. You see the first one is with LaRue Brown. And Clifford Brown nicknamed her Little Miss Meow back when he first met her in Los Angeles. And actually, that was the original title of Joy Spring before he changed it to Joy Spring. And the other photo is Wilmington pianist Deanie Jenkins, who was a friend of Clifford Brown's. And he's there in that photo with Don Glandon, who teaches at the University of the Arts and has produced a fantastic documentary on Clifford Brown called Brownie Speaks. If you haven't seen that, you should definitely check it out. It's wonderful. A couple more Wilmington area musicians talking about Clifford. Charles Bop Wilson was a little younger than Clifford, ended up touring with Ray Charles, and he said the Arbins book is the key to everything. The technique's in there, and he got a lot of his ideas from there. Actually, he was one of at least a dozen people who told me Clifford loved the Arbins book. Practiced out of it all the time. Also, Marcus Belgrave, trumpet player who ended up in Detroit, said he studied with Boise as well, and he said he had everything scientifically laid out. He was into writing his ideas down, and he'd always tell him to write his ideas down. And you can see LaRue confirm that. He carried around a pad to write things down. A little bit about his equipment. He played most of his recordings and most of his career on a Blessing Super Artist trumpet. You can see Art Blakey there, and Art in an interview said, I bought him a trumpet one time. I think it was a blessing. So I think Art bought that for him at Manny's in New York. And it was a large bore horn, a 468 or a 470 bore. So Clifford favored that horn for most of his career. And his teacher Boise actually cut his mouthpiece off at the shank when he was first starting so he could produce higher notes easier and clearer. I guess a lot of old school players did that. I don't think Clifford continued that practice. Here you can read about some of his mouthpieces from Bobby Shew and Blue Mitchell while you listen to If I Love Again. And as Bobby mentions, I think you can really hear that in the articulation of that sample, that he played a rather small mouthpiece, so he had to have a pretty small aperture to make that work. So, a couple more comments about his incredible tonguing technique on the trumpet. Brad talks about the blessing with a Bach mouthpiece giving you a pretty good gap, which helps you tongue quicker. And Floyd Standifer talks about the resistance setup on a small mouthpiece with a large bore horn helps you pop notes a little bit. But no matter what, Winton sums it up well when he says it's really hard to play the trumpet and tongue that much. You can check that out on Pent Up House here, Clifford plays. Here's a little bit about Clifford's sound, his wonderful and beautiful sound. We always think of it as such a big, big, fat sound, but Bobby Shew explains here that he had a lip vibrato. He controlled this aperture with a lip vibrato, a sound controlling device where it would open and close and give you the illusion of a big sound when it was open, but he was able to close back down and play faster. So you can read these quotes while you're listening to Portrait of Jenny. Couple of fun pictures here. The top one, you can read that he was trying to get a knot on his lip. He told Leon, his brother. Leon said, "I don't know what he was doing, but I told him he was going to mess his mouth up." Anyways, you can see it in the picture on his top lip. He has quite a little bit of a knot there, kind of a callus to play. And the other photo is him in high school. 1947, during his senior year, they got new marching band uniforms. This was taken in front of Howard High. A little quote by his band director, Harry Andrews, on what a beautiful range he was developing. I love the little trumpet one on the flip folder there. Great photo. Somewhere at the end of high school, or maybe the beginning of college, he went up to Philadelphia and he knocked on Red Rodney's door and asked for a lesson. Rodney had been playing and recording with Bird, so he wanted some advice from him. Red said he was playing great. He really couldn't say anything other than to keep doing what you're doing, but he didn't quite have the high register he later had. So he suggested he go see Donald Reinhardt, which he did. And Bobby talks about a little of the buzzing that he did, kind of a flutter that he heard on some of the practice tapes, which is another smart thing that Clifford would do, kind of keep his chops in great shape. You can read these quotes from some fellow musicians as you listen to Clifford play Delilah. He certainly was playing the whole instrument. I agree with Benny Golson there. Okay, on to part two. This is a little bit about his influences in his playing, of course, his jazz improvisation and the creative side of things. And again, we start out with Clifford Brown talking with Willis Conover, who you can see in the bottom photo there.
I think one of the first records I heard of any trumpet player, to really listen to as a trumpet player myself was Let Me Off Uptown by Roy Eldridge. And I was very inspired by that.
Let's hear a little bit of that recording.
No, it must be that uptown rhythm. I feel like blowing.
Well, blow, Roy, blow.
And a little bit about the vibrato in the old style versus the new style of playing at that time.
The vibrato at the end of the notes, almost to the extent that it's like a little shake, was very prominent before, and it gave a feeling of warmth. It was so warm that it was almost to what we would call hot now, and modern jazz isn't too hot. It's not cool, but it's not too hot. It's supposed to be the happy medium.
A little bit more about emotion in playing, the new style versus the old, and then a little bit about jazz playing.
It's just it's the way that the emotion is put forth, I guess I would say. It's not in one or two notes. You don't put it all in one or two notes, and in the phrasing of one or two notes, it's more of a thing that goes along generally, and by the notes that you play and the ideas and the technical things that you play all put together, you get that similar feeling of warmth. Important that you know all of your chord progressions, and so you play a specific tune, and it has specific chord progressions, and you should be thoroughly familiar. You should know them just backward and forward, so to speak. You should know the changes thoroughly, and in knowing the changes, then it gives you a lot of freedom, and you're not only permitted to play from the basic changes, but you will sort of hear things by ear. By knowing what the change is, you'll hear things.
Here's some more short commentary from that blindfold test that Clifford did in Downbeat magazine. And by kind of reading his comments, you can learn what his aesthetic was about what he was going after in his playing, by how he's talking about these pieces. So the first one's Kenny Dorham, Miner's Holiday. You can read that while you listen. And he did recognize Kenny on that one. He knew that recording. Kenton, he didn't recognize that. Another Clifford Brown statement you can read here that he made to Nat Hentoff in an article that he did for Downbeat magazine about the idea of an organized sound becoming a trend in modern jazz groups. And you can listen to a little bit solo on Blues Walk while you read this. I only heard 4 choruses of his solo, but the whole solo is 7 choruses. The first 3, as you heard, are kind of a little build up with no background. The next 2 choruses are the background that you heard and much more tension build. And then the last 2 choruses, it immediately drops down to a softer level and less tension. So talking about having your solos built into each arrangement, all the solos on this tune kind of follow that format. So Clifford Brown Max Roach Ensemble was definitely into planning these things out so they could control the tension and release for their listener. Definitely on their recordings, maybe not so much on the live stuff. It's a wonderful picture of Fats Navarro and Clifford Brown right before Fats passed away in 1950. By Clifford's own admission, Fats was his favorite player. But as you see up there, Boise was saying we wouldn't allow him to copy anybody, so we was telling him to get his own thing going, not to copy Fats. And Deanie Jenkins reiterates, yes, he was into Fats as far as style goes, but he didn't really copy people's solos. He was developing his own way about his soloing. You can hear his first professional solo here with the Chris Powell Rhythm and Blues Group. This is I Come from Jamaica. Here's 3 impressions from great trumpet players about the personality and intimacy of Clifford Brown's sound, which you can read while you listen to a little bit of Joy Spring. Probably at least one of the most important things, if not the most important thing about Clifford, is he played his trumpet as a singer would sing. He sang on the trumpet. And you could read these wonderful quotes about him being a singer on the instrument while you listen to him play What's New. And his wife LaRue confirmed that he loved to listen to singers, and he loved to sing himself, and he had some favorite people like Sarah Vaughan, and liked to express himself as a singer. You can hear him play with Sarah Vaughan here, September Song.
With
And he loved the great Mexican virtuoso Rafael Mendez, as we all do. You can read the quote from Mark Lewis about the 10-inch record he got that was really worn out of Mendez's while you listen to Mendez play Aura Staccato. wife LaRue told a great story about when Clifford was on the Steve Allen Tonight Show when it was in New York City. He asked Clifford about a certain cool lick that he played, and he said, "Oh, I stole that from Rafael Mendez." And she said years later when she met Mendez, Mendez had seen that show, so he was also tickled about that. Um, while you listen to one of Clifford Brown's compositions, Dawood, you can read these quotes about him having such a mathematical mind. It's so cool that he found the connection between math and music. And I don't know if his own compositions like that one had anything to do with his mathematical talents, but it's fun to think that anyways. You can be the judge. Here's a couple of bits of information here. Clifford Brown was a multi-instrumentalist. He played a lot of piano. He pretty much started that along with the trumpet. His whole family played piano, and he even sat in a lot of times on piano. He also studied vibes with Boise Lowry and also bass and played a little bit of drums too. There's a lot of references to these, him playing these instruments. And I love this other quote from LaRue. I asked her one time if he ever transcribed people's solos and wrote them down, and she said, no, he didn't ever transcribe it, but he absorbed it, like the sound of the ocean, the feeling that he had for a sunset, and it would come out in his horn. Very beautiful. I could hear that. And here's some quotes from Dr. Billy Taylor and my good friend Brad Good about Clifford Brown's dealing with a harmonic language. You could read these while you're listening to him play on All the Things You Are. I think Brad's comparison to Bird, Charlie Parker, is very apropos. Here, Brad is talking about the way Clifford took what Fats was doing and took it a step further, actually. And while you read this, you can check out Fats playing on Sweet Georgia Brown and then Clifford playing on the same tune. And here's Clifford's version, a little faster. And like so many great improvisers, Clifford thought compositionally. You could read this wonderful quote from Dr. Taylor as I play part of his monumental solo on I Don't Stand a Ghost of a Chance with You. Yeah, beautiful solo. And here's a couple of great quotes you can read while you listen to Clifford Brown play After You've Gone, the live session at the Beehive with Harold Land in 1955. You can pretty much hear how he constantly pushed himself. Talk about utter confidence there and not being afraid to take any chances. He was definitely pushing himself to expand creatively, and also, as Quincy says, would never play without sincerely feeling the piece. That's a hallmark of all of his playing that you listen to. Okay, part three. Clifford was known as a very savvy and even as sometimes a tough business person. So this is a little bit about his business sensibility and the goals he had there. And I actually chose this photo because this is Clifford Brown as a teenager leading his own group at the Mercantile Hall in Philadelphia. So even in his younger years, he already had that head on straight about being a leader and taking care of the music business things. This is a quote that Clifford told to Nat Hentoff um, about the responsibility of small groups sticking together. And you can read this whole quote as you listen to actually him play Cherokee. Very sage advice here from such a young musician who many always said had wisdom well beyond his age and years. This is a great quote from LaRue about the business partnership of Clifford and Max together. She said, "The business end was shared, and I think it was a very interesting partnership because Max was a very aggressive, domineering person, and Clifford was a very strong, silent, warm person. So they really offset each other. If Max got to ranting and made everybody angry, Clifford could go in and smooth it over. Or if Clifford's cell was too soft, then Max could go in and pull it together. They were really good for each other." And here's his partner, Max Roach, talking about the kind of the toughness of that Clifford Brown could have sometimes.
I mean, he was really, really, really heavy, and I wouldn't put it past him whether he would shoot somebody, because I remember we were in Buffalo. We were in Buffalo at one point, and Buffalo during that time, as is today, a lot of the places were controlled by the syndicate, and some of them were just write-offs. If you don't know what that means, it means that they open up a lot of clubs and they have to have some place to say, this is how we get our money. And they don't care whether the public comes in or not. And these places are managed by people who are part of the syndicate. And so the guy, at the end of the week, he came up short with the loot. Clifford went into the office, stayed for a while I was packing up my kit and everything. And when he came out with the money. And so the guy said to me, he said, that's a rough little guy there.
Here's a wonderful quote from LaRue about how he took care of business for her and their little son. You see him with his son in that first picture up there. You can read this while you listen to him play Sandu, his composition. And finally, part 4, kind of a glimpse into his personality and the traits that made him a wonderful human being. His first quote is from his brother Leon. He said when he was a teenager, they'd have a lot of jam sessions. He'd play with some local bands, and everyone would get excited but him. He really took his time. And most importantly, he never said anything bad against anybody. Okay. And his sister Rella told me that our mother taught us, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And Clifford lived by that golden rule. And that's why he was such a good-hearted person. He would never do anything to anyone that he would not want someone to do to him. And he was such a beautiful person from that. Again, Marcus Belgrave, who played with him around the Wilmington area, used to go weekly to play with some of the bands from the Elks Clubs, the Elks Club bands that kind of played march music and things like that. And he said Clifford would show up and play. And he said, I asked him why he bothered to show up and play these circus-type tunes. And he said, well, I like all kinds of music. And Marcus said, from that point on, I delved into anything I can get my hands on. That one thing he said really turned me around. You could read what his first employer, Chris Powell, says about his personality while you listen to another one of his first recordings, Ida Red. Almost too good to be true, he says. Here's a couple great quotes from his wife LaRue about Clifford the Romanticist. The first one about the Sarah Vaughan date she was on, and I'm going to play you part of this tune, I'm Glad There Is You, while you read this.
More than ever, I'm glad there is you. I live to love, I love to live with you beside me. This rose so new, I muddle through with you to guide me.
After a very whirlwind courtship, Clifford proposed marriage to LaRue on the Santa Monica beach one night while he played the song LaRue to her and said, will you marry my music and me? And this is a little snippet of that song. Clifford never recorded it. It was too personal for them. But there's been a couple recordings since, and actually this is me playing it. It's on my most recent recording with Jazz Muses, so a little snippet of part of the melody. could read this quote, another quote from LaRue about she was so surprised that she never hears negativity about Clifford anywhere. And this is he playing with the J.J. Johnson group, the tune Get Happy. This is a wonderful story from his good friend, saxophone player Benny Golson, which you can read while you listen to Golson's composition, I Remember Clifford, which he composed as a tribute after Clifford died. And this is actually another one of my favorite trumpet players, Lee Morgan, playing the tune, which is actually the first recording of the piece done in 1957. Beautiful tune. Here's a couple nice quotes from his friend Art Farmer from the Lionel Hampton Band. You can see Art at the tail end of the trumpet section there, laughing with Quincy Jones there. And you can read these while I play. He and Clifford exchanging solos on the tune Excuse These Blues while they were over in Europe with Lionel Hampton. Here's a couple quotes from very good musician friends of Clifford's, Harold Land, and you see Horace Silver there at the piano. This is at actually a session with Miles Davis you see in the middle, and Clifford Brown was present right before he went out to join Max over on the West Coast. And matter of fact, Miles uses his trumpet during the session, so Miles must have pawned or sold his trumpet at this point. Anyways, Horace told me a great story when they were rehearsing with Art Blakey in the Birdland Club. Miles came in one afternoon and listened for a while and got up to leave, and he turned around and he said, "Clifford, I hope you break your chops." He got a big kick out of that. Curly Russell said, "Oh, he means that, man, he means that." And I couldn't think of a better way to sum up Clifford Brown and his whole personality and music and everything beyond what Quincy Jones says here in this great tribute he wrote right after Clifford passed. And while you read this, I'm going to play Quincy's composition Stockholm Sweetenin' with Clifford soloing on it. And Quincy thought so much of this solo that when he remade that tune in the 1960s on his record, This Is How I Feel About Jazz, he had the whole band play this solo in unison. It's a very beautiful solo. So check this out while you read Quincy's words. open that. And that reaches the end of my presentation. I thank you all for joining me for this. I'm going to come back on screen for you. Hello. Yeah, I'm going to play you out with one more piece, Clifford playing on the traditional blues with the Art Blakey group. Hope you enjoy that. I hope you enjoy the whole presentation and unique presentation about Clifford, and hope you learned something new about him and something that you could take into your own playing in your own life. Definitely go check out Clifford. Check out the documentary, Brownie Speaks, and learn a bit more about him. I think you'll really appreciate his artistry the more you know about him. So I thank everyone for attending, and I thank the ITG and of course our conference coordinator JC, Adriana, and the rest of the staff for putting this great conference together. And enjoy the rest of the events. Here's Clifford playing the blues. Thank you. I thank you all. Bye-bye.